The Cleveland Browns are no longer just losing football games. What is unfolding right now is a full-scale organizational collapse. The kind that exposes how fragile narratives can be when they are built on manipulation instead of truth. For months, something felt off about the way this franchise talked about its quarterback future. The tone was strange. The coverage was aggressive in one direction and suspiciously silent in another. And now, with leaked training camp details, on-field results, and media reversals piling up, the picture has become impossible to ignore. This was not a simple scouting miss. This was a coordinated failure involving media voices, front office decisions, and a franchise that believed it could shape reality instead of responding to it. Long before the draft arrived, a story was being carefully constructed around Shedeur Sanders. It was relentless. Questions about his maturity, his leadership, his readiness, and even his character were repeated so often they became accepted truth in Cleveland media circles. The framing was consistent. He was positioned as risky, entitled, and unworthy of being a franchise cornerstone. And the more that narrative was repeated, the less it resembled objective evaluation and the more it resembled something intentional. The tipping point was the speeding ticket incident, a routine traffic violation that somehow became a multi-week media obsession. The coverage treated it as if it revealed something deeply troubling about who Sanders was as a person, not just a quarterback. Segments were recycled, articles were republished, radio debates spiraled, all over a mistake that thousands of people make every day. Then came the moment that shattered any illusion of fairness. Just weeks later, Myles Garrett, the face of the Browns franchise and one of the most celebrated defenders in the league, was cited for the same thing: speeding. The difference was not subtle. The story barely existed. A passing mention? New outrage cycle? No character analysis? No speculation about leadership. It disappeared instantly. That contrast alone told the entire story. The issue was never behavior. It was who the behavior belonged to. One player was protected by status and narrative value. The other was targeted because doubt needed to be planted, while that media machine was working overtime to tear down Sanders. Reality was unfolding in a completely different direction. Sanders was not hiding. He was not deflecting. He was visible in ways that directly contradicted the image being painted. He was in underserved communities, in schools, in neighborhoods that rarely see athletes with his profiles show up without cameras or He was connecting with kids who needed inspiration, not headlines. Those moments existed. They were real, and they were almost entirely ignored. Positive stories do not survive when they threaten a predetermined conclusion, highlighting that work would have forced uncomfortable questions. So it was buried. There is an uncomfortable truth at the center of this story that cannot be ignored. Sanders made certain people uncomfortable, not because of football, but because of confidence, independence, and visibility outside the control of traditional media pipelines. He did not play the expected role. He did not perform humility on command. He did not need access from the same reporters who wanted leverage over his narrative. And that resistance was met with scrutiny that went far beyond football evaluation. This was not about arm strength or processing speed. This was about control. Fast forward to the present, and the consequences are impossible to hide. Cleveland passed on Sanders and instead selected Dillon Gabriel in the third round, then immediately elevated him publicly as the future. The organization committed to him verbally, structurally, and narratively. The media echoed it. Training camp buzz was shaped around him. Doubt was suppressed. And now the results are on full display. 4 starts, no rhythm, no command, no sustained drives, an offense that looks completely lost. What was promised as development has turned into embarrassment. And suddenly, the same voices that built him up are tearing him down just as aggressively. This is where the story becomes damning. Media figures are now admitting that they knew. They saw the issues in camp. They had doubts early. They discussed them privately, but they stayed quiet publicly when it mattered. That silence was not neutral. It enabled the decision. It protected the narrative. And now those same voices are trying to rewrite history by claiming quiet skepticism as if that absolves them. It does not. If you know something is wrong and choose not to say it while amplifying something else, you are participating. The reversal has been stunning to watch. Analysts who once dismissed Sanders as flawed now speak openly about organizational regret. Commentators who confidently declared Gabriel the answer are now calling the product unwise. The receipts exist. The audio exists. The articles exist. This is not hindsight. This is accountability catching up in real time. Perhaps the most revealing shift came from media members, who once publicly stated Sanders was a top-tier prospect, a near-lock to be one of the first quarterbacks off the board. Those statements did not disappear by accident. They were replaced. The narrative changed, not because the film changed, but because the talking points did. And that pivot directly shaped the Browns' decision. Nothing about Sanders deteriorated. Only the willingness to support him did. Now the franchise is trapped with the consequences. A wasted pick, a fractured quarterback room, A fan base watching another rebuild spiral before it begins. And a media ecosystem desperately trying to distance itself from the very story it helped write. That is no longer just about one quarterback versus another. It is about how narratives are manufactured, how silence can be as damaging as misinformation, and how accountability is often avoided until failure makes it unavoidable. The Browns believed they could control perception long enough for results to follow. Instead, reality arrived early and loudly. What happens next will define more than a season. It will define whether this organization learns from its own collapse or repeats it with a new name and a new excuse. And it will define whether media credibility means anything when pressure is applied. Now, it is your turn. Do you believe this was a coordinated effort to shape a narrative rather than evaluate talent honestly? Should media figures who admitted they knew better face consequences for staying silent? And what does this say about how quarterbacks are judged before they ever take a snap? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you want more deep dives that cut through surface-level takes and expose what is really happening behind the scenes, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay locked in. This story is far from over, and the truth is only starting to surface.